8 crazy nights. 8 crazy nights. I can't begin to think all my thoughts into Adam Sandler's nightmare of a holiday movie, to the point where this is easily among the worst animated holiday movies to ever exist. Honestly, I know this movie has its audience, and Letterboxd has more than 7,500 ratings of this movie with 6 out of 10 or higher. Adding that this site and IMDb have ratings nearing around the 5 out of 10 range, there's clearly fans of this film that are balancing this out. And it's gathered a bit of a following, becoming somewhat of a meme over the last couple of years. So how do I even break down a movie so fundamentally broken and mind-numbingly heinous? Well, I decided it could be fun since it is 8 crazy nights. I'll break it down into 8 crazy segments, highlighting the main components that make this movie up, mainly for the worst. However, it's not a 1 out of 10 movie because there are some sprinkles of positivity in there, but you have to dig into it more to get to that. I will say now that I don't dislike Adam Sandler. He's had misses over the years.
Adam Sandler? What are you doing here?
Waiting for them to play Gangnam Style.
But he still makes good stuff. For example, I'm still baffled that he got snubbed for his role in Uncut Gems at the Oscars, not even getting a nomination for his stellar acting. And if we're talking about very recent roles, his most recent attempt at animation, Leo, was surprisingly pretty decent and personally my favorite animated film he's been in. So with that said, let's get through this mess. Honestly, I feel like the best place to start is with this atrocity story. We start off with a narration from Rob Schneider.
Well, alright. Look at all that beautiful white stuff come down.
Already a fantastic start right there. Where we start our movie at a Chinese restaurant where the owner of the restaurant is also played by Rob Schneider.
4 scorpion ball in 5 minutes? That's gotta be a restaurant record.
It's already been a little over a minute in, and we already have yet another case of Rob Schneider playing a racist stereotype. I'll brush off this one-off stereotype for now because we have a much bigger fish to fry, as we're introduced to this film's main character, easily one of the most hateable leads in any movie, Davy Stone. So Davy starts us off by downing 4 scorpion bowls within 5 minutes, as the restaurant guy says. Okay, so as a person with zero knowledge of alcohol, I've never heard of this drink before watching this for the first time in 2017. So now I find myself researching for a while, only to find the internet didn't tell me exactly how much alcohol was in each one. But it did make me realize that Davy Stone has the alcohol tolerance of a Lannister, since one of them is supposed to be for 4 people, and he drank 4 within 5 minutes. I'm pretty sure he would have died that night. Anyway, Davy left the restaurant almost ready to drive home in his inebriated state. I will give them credit that they actually do have a decent visual gag with the key scratches. I will give them that. Anyway, then a couple of cops pull up and stop him from entering his car and forces him to walk home, which then follows up with Davy getting all My Strange Addiction on his car, which is about as horrifying as it sounds. After that nightmare is over, it turns out he tried to dine and dash, which ensues in a police chase where he does some very impossible stuff, especially for a drunk guy, like effortlessly running straight, using a garbage lid as a mini snowboard, or especially singing clearly. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that this was a musical. I'll just say now, this is the best song in the movie by a landslide, which unfortunately means it's all downhill from here.
I hate you, I hate me.
Davy Stone, you're nothing but a delinquent.
So Davy gets arrested and is about to be in jail for 10 years for the many crimes he's committed throughout his life in the town, which is immaturely called Dukesbury, by the way. I forgot to mention that. And before we go further, this movie is heavy on the exposition. This judge goes on and on like it's solely his job to explain backstories in long, drawn-out sentences to pad out the running time, rather than letting the movie explain it later on. Which is a very damning issue because the movie without the credits is only an hour and 10 minutes. And oh hey, the racist Rob Schneider character again. Great. Hopefully he's not back anytime soon. However, an older man named Whitey comes to the scene and helps Davy by convincing the judge to let him off by making him an apprentice to him as a referee for the youth basketball league if he doesn't break a single law. Which works for some reason. And what can be as bad as one of the most unlikable leads in film history? How about partnering him up with one of the most annoying characters in any film? Seriously, Gurgi has nothing on this guy.
Oh, poor miserable Gurgi deserves fierce smackings and whackings.
That doesn't mean I don't find this thing insufferable either. I'm glad he died. Also, the fact Sandler voices both of them makes this even worse. Okay, so at the youth basketball court, where Davey immediately breaks a law within seconds, he, no surprise, does an awful job and weight shames a kid on the court, which then follows up with Whitey getting a seizure, which the film treats as a joke. What the actual hell was wrong with these writers? For some reason, Whitey still tries to see the good in him by going into the mall, the place where Whitey goes to clear his head. And well, this is where I make a hard cut into the second segment for a second, because this scene is embarrassing on so many levels. This movie has the most shameless product placements in any movie ever. Hands down.
I mean, the Body Shop, the Tie Rack, GNC, Radio Shack, and don't forget the orange chicken at Panda Express.
Like, seriously, is this a thing? I can't believe how forced and awful the product placements in this movie are. And trust me, it gets much worse later down the line. Now that corporate brown-nosing is over, we get introduced to Davey's childhood friend and ex-girlfriend, Jennifer, and her son, Benjamin, which would, of course, not go well, as he's making more rude comments and being a show-offish, cocky scumbag as per usual. After that, we would learn that the town holds a contest every year and give a patch to someone who, by vote, does positive things they've done for the community, and Whitey is sure that it's his turn to get it. Soon after, we randomly get another song.
A dance with me at the annual All-Star Banquet.
And yes, you're seeing it right now, they give Whitey a song. And unfortunately not his last. That awful creative decision seriously plagues the film's soundtrack so much that it hurts. This one, thankfully, was 45 seconds long. The next day, as thanks for forgiving him multiple times, Davey shoves Whitey in a porta potty and freezes him with a hose, with the remnants of the porta potty stuck frozen to him.
Smell you later, poopsicle.
Again, this is supposed to be a character that we're supposed to like. Yet somehow, after that incident, he's given yet another shot. This time, he comes across Whitey keeping an eye on Jennifer's son Benjamin at the basketball court. After making commentary against the guys playing on the court, the guys there challenge Davey and Whitey in a 2v2 with the loser eating a jockstrap. The guys wallop Whitey, and Benjamin came in to replace him. Davey would give Ben pointers on how to play the game, and they wound up bonding and beating the guys. Of course, as most movies go, one inconveniently timed thing, in this case Ben swearing, happens as soon as his mother enters the door, ending the whole moment with her still being mad at Davey. On the drive back to their respective homes, he and Jennifer, in separate cars, sing about reminiscing about their childhood, a time when Davey wasn't a raving dick, and how they were in a brief relationship.
Down by the creek I would show fireflies to that girl.
It's a little cheesy, but kind of sweet. But then, the songwriters had to ruin it by shoehorning Whitey in there, who's just saying random, unfunny, and unrelated nonsense, still in that awful voice.
But that was back when he was nice.
Before my warm heart turned to ice.
My sister's wig once had lice.
I have to say again, horrible decision by the writers. Like, why can't it just be a nice duet? No, it's just shot right down. The song is promptly interrupted as the jockstrap guy from before decides to set Davey's trailer on fire as revenge for losing the basketball game. Whitey offers for Davey to stay at his house, which Davey begrudgingly agrees to. And to add fuel to the annoyingness, we're introduced to Whitey's sister, Eleanor. Does anyone want to guess who voices her? Of course it's Sandler!
You hoodlums better bring my wig back! I know it was you!
After acting not to the sibling standards in their own house, they decided to set ground rules for him with a musical number. And no shock at all, combining two annoying voices and squishing them into a song would easily make this the worst song of the movie by a landslide. Kill me.
This is such bullshit.
In this house we say bullspit, or it's a technical foul. A technical foul.
After that, we have maybe a minute of them bonding, like that'll make us feel different about anyone in the film, and another unfunny seizure joke to make things worse. Speaking of worse, Whitey would tell the story of why Davey acts so awfully was all because of his parents dying in a car accident. And in a comedy movie like this, having this sudden dramatic death scene makes things all the more confusing. And despite Davey telling him to stop numerous times, he would say the whole story, which gets Davey furious, and then blows up on both of the siblings before running off.
he just a no good Nick. And I am the real Kuriste Yamaguchi.
Aw, come on, you again? Later that day, David would break into the mall for some reason, yelling aimlessly at Jennifer, who wasn't there.
Jennifer!
Which is when this happens.
Who said that?
I said that.
This was what I meant when I said it could get worse. If shamelessly name-dropping product names by the dozens weren't enough, the actual products come to life and they try to turn Davey around to make him cry through song.
We all heard what happened at the skating rink today.
Hey look, that's the title of my recording. This scene was as mind-bogglingly stupid as it was when I first saw this. And the fact that they try to attach this song and the weird ideas in this scene with an emotional scene where Davey finally cries makes you not take any of this seriously. Alright, let me get the third segment done and out of the way. Davey has one of the sloppiest character arcs I've ever seen. With how the tone, the writing, and the general actions of this guy without anything redeeming being shown, there's no reason for me to suddenly care for him when the writers did an abysmal job trying to redeem him, on top of how rushed it was. So it truly affects the ending because I don't buy that Davey turned over a new leaf because of a one heart-to-heart conversation with literal living product placements. So after another chase with the police, Davey goes to the banquet hall for the patch ceremony where Davey finds out Whitey lost. Davey would then burst into the hall and another song breaks out about how everyone is wrong about Whitey and calls out practically the whole town for treating him as awful as they did. Honestly, I'd say this is the runner-up in terms of songs for the movie, but honestly, the bar is so low that it's not much of a shock.
Either laughed in Whitey's face or ruthlessly made fun of his feet or voice or sister or shortness when he wasn't looking.
All I'm getting out of this song is that everyone in this movie besides a select few people are horrible. I'm not buying that they also feel as sorry as they are because, again, just one random musical number suddenly fixes everything. And to top it all off, one of the cops comes by with a random dance people memed about for weeks. And guess who comes by to join the cop? The racist Asian stereotype! Just embarrassing. I can't believe such a clunky turnaround for these characters could exist, but here we are. The movie finally ends with Whitey and his sister at the mall, where Whitey talks to the product placements of all things about his loss, which of course is completely stupid. Then Davey surprises him with the whole town showing up and they, with a change of heart, give Whitey his patch. Then every other past winner would give him their patches. And to cap the movie off, it ends with one last seizure joke.
Don't worry, folks. Whitey's okay.
This is the happiest seizure of my life!
I hate this movie so much. So, there's the insane plot of this awful movie. Now that we've knocked down 3 segments already, I might as well give my biggest compliment to the movie, the animation. Easy. We might as well start with the first thing we see in the film, the backgrounds. The backgrounds are fantastic and nail the holiday feel that the film tried to accomplish. The colors significantly help the backgrounds pop as well, since the film's plot barely focuses on the holiday aspect except in pieces. It's good to have the background designers give it their all to make this small town seem alive and completely holiday driven. It also advances the locations where stuff like the banquet hall, the skating rink, and especially the mall feel distinct and well done, even if a particular location reminds me of how unnecessarily off the wall the plot gets. The animation itself is very smooth and impressive. And it makes sense because plenty of animators for the film were brought in from Warner Brothers after they had to move on from many of them after some of their animated movies like Quest for Camelot and The Iron Giant flopped. Both of those would wind up failing because of poor marketing though, a pattern that Warner Brothers never learned from. Anyways, in the animation, it does show that while it's not beautifully animated like Iron Giant, I will give it that it still retains some great character animation and designs that are distinguishable enough to give this film at least its own visual identity. Speaking of Quest for Camelot, aka my favorite bad movie, it's free on YouTube right now, and as I'm writing this, I'm watching this in the background, so maybe expect some comparisons for fun. Back to the animation, I will say, like Camelot, there is the slight downside. It does happen where the animation can get clunky. It doesn't happen far as often, but there are times when it does happen, it's hard not to notice, making this film have some, at least, ironic enjoyment. Also, I must say, while I definitely would blame the writing, I must comment on the gross out. And I have to ask, did they really have to make those moments as they did? Because of how they executed the scenes to be as excessive and disgusting as possible, it makes the moments go on hugely uncomfortable levels, which is why I had to censor a lot of it. Overall, great animation. It may be uneven in small spots, it's still the best quality the film can offer. Of course, I've gone into some detail on Davey already, but honestly, there's much more I need to get into. Yes, I get that he acts cranky and mad from his parents dying, but that cannot in any circumstance excuse any of the horrible actions and chaos he's done throughout this movie. I've already mentioned his treatment towards Whitey, but even what I said was a fraction of the bad shit he's done. Again, I have to bring up when he blew up against Whitey and Eleanor. While I can't agree it wasn't right for Whitey to spill out Davey's story despite him saying numerous times to stop, Davey went way too far, digging deep into every conceivable insult and factor he has against both of them. And do I have to bring up the mountains of other insults, the porta-john, the harassment against the others in the town, the numerous amounts of other crimes like driving while intoxicated, Grand Theft Auto, and a bunch of property destruction? This man has done so much disservice to the town and deserves much more than a scene for everyone to suddenly forgive him. It's baffling that this movie tries to give him a minute-long scene or two to try and suddenly make him a likable person when he's a horrible and distasteful human being. Again, I do not think he's changed for the better because the film gives nothing of value to give Davey any redeeming qualities. Considering this is supposed to be the film's driving force, it makes the whole movie as insufferable and dreadful as possible, making it a chore to sit through. This problem would then transition into another prominent issue, the rest of the cast. Like Davey, there's practically nothing redeeming about the rest of the town. The townspeople that don't include Whitey, Eleanor, Jennifer, and her son were terrible people. The townsfolk were horrible to Whitey, like having him do odd jobs without paying him, not aiding him when helping them out causes him injury, or even more insult and snide comments. For example, when his supposed prom date baited him by having him go to the dance while she would wind up dancing with another man, saying in quote,
"I can't believe you thought I was serious."
These people get the same if not less reason to switch around and change their minds about Whitey. At the very least, they're right to criticize Davey for his awful actions. I do not believe that it justifies enough. The others don't fare well either. Jennifer is just a love interest with only the basics of a movie mom character archetype. Her son Benjamin has no personality outside of being a kid who's an outcast and nothing more. Then, of course, the duology of annoying, the Duval twins. Eleanor is not as bad, being kind of an obnoxious and annoyed, concerned sister who always has the small running joke about having her wig stolen years ago and trying to find out who took it. I did appreciate that the wig joke did get a payoff, with her eventually encountering the guy who stole it and kicking him right in the face. Finally, we have Whitey. He's like the polar opposite of Davey, being very optimistic and willing to help everyone in town, and is the youth basketball league referee. This film desperately tries to make him likable, but as previously stated, his voice ruins all of that. His voice is so ear-piercing and annoying that any sort of sweet trait is chucked right out the window, and you're stuck with a guy blabbering and all you want to do is press the mute button. On top of that, his forgiving nature can be so overdone that it makes me wonder why he never considers calling the police for anything. Maybe it's to spare those police folk from how he speaks.
Responsibility and teamwork. I've been doing my part for 35 years.
There is nothing I remotely like about this cast. Even the voice acting can't save them from being, at best, serviceably bland to dangerously unlikable. I'm gonna only breeze past our next segment, the comedy, because honestly, there's a lot of bad, and practically nothing good about it. It's full of unfunny puns, one-liners, dated jokes, or, the worst of all, as I've said, the gross out. Filling itself with gas humor, or worse, any kind of mass coming out of the human body, and I really mean anything. It's shown for sometimes extended periods to try to be as, in quote, funny as possible. Another joke this film likes to make is interrupting an integral moment with a random out-of-nowhere joke. I get that there's an audience for out-of-nowhere content like that. There's actually an audience for any joke, But these jokes ruin moments that could have been nice. Again, bringing up the Davy story scene, you know what they followed up with? Pathetic. Honestly, if I had to keep mentioning the Long Ago song, I will explode. So yeah, terrible comedy that made a bad movie even worse. Also, there was this scene that I might as well bring up because I don't know where else to put it in the video, but it just needs to be seen to be believed.
That kind of shooting makes me want to do the robot thing.
What the fuck? Now all that's left to do before the conclusion is to talk about every song in the film. Except for the little song at the end and the credits songs, we have 6 to talk about. Let's first talk about, in my opinion, the best song in the film by a wide margin, simply titled Davy's Song. Honestly, this is the only song where I could see Sandler's full talent shine through while writing it, because the guy is genuinely talented as a songwriter and singer. So it sucks how most of the soundtrack falls a bit flat because you could tell from this song that he does indeed have the chops to pull off a pretty good soundtrack. However, unfortunately, we mostly just have this as our example of Adam's good songwriting capabilities rather than a full set. My only real complaint is that it does have its Happy Madison isms with a whole line dedicating to flashing a bunch of carolers and crop dusting them, or a fake out joke where, honestly, I'll let the clip play for itself.
But I'll give this old lady's melons a squeeze.
But even with those complaints, I say the song itself is still pretty solid. Also, it's ironically funny when Davy crashes against the ice sculptures. No one in the background is phased. Anyways, next is a very brief talk about a very brief song, The Patch Song, which is Whitey talking about how it'll be his turn to win the annual patch. Again, we see either gross imagery or even just plain weird imagery, like this lady who just looks like she's straight out of Total Recall. Yes, it's annoying, but it's blissfully short. Next is Long Ago, where Davy and Jennifer reflect on their childhood before Davy's parents died and when Davy was a nice person. Also, because they felt like it, they just also had to put in a transphobic joke because, I guess, this was the early 2000s. Again, to bring it up, this song had the potential to be something really good. The singing from both Sandler and Alison Krauss sounded good and had a chance to be heartwarming and sweet. But, of course, as I've said, the inclusion of Whitey in this song completely bastardizes it and gives no reason of re-listening to it in the future. It's already bad that he's bombarding through a solid enough duet, but he's interrupting it with complete and utter nonsense that has nothing to do with the rest of the plot.
In the woods we used to roam.
The only time I had sex was on the phone.
Okay, he's useless.
And speaking of Whitey, the next song is easily the worst of the soundtrack, Technical Foul. The song where he and his sister give Davy ground rules after letting him stay in their house after his trailer caught on fire. Not only does the pairing of both Whitey and Eleanor's voice feel like nails on a chalkboard, but the song would then devolve into that same random nonsense territory to fill in space for the song. And then it also involves Davy asking various obviously bad suggestions, which I can only assume had been made to extend the running time and for cheap laughs that never land.
Or give sugar cookies to Miss Diabetes. Take a whiz in those flowers. Make some long distance calls.
You got a kick in the balls, Hoop!
What makes it worse is that this is one of the longer songs in the film, clocking in at over 3 minutes, which honestly feel longer, and I already have pointed out some of the real bad pacing problems in this movie. The only positive thing I got out of this song is a YouTube video where somebody replaced the last word from each of Davy's lines with
morning erection,
which is actually way funnier than anything in the movie. I'll put it in the description. After a long time, by the film standards, we get to the intervention song. The product placement song I spent an entire segment on, so I don't have to repeat myself on that because I don't want to talk about it again. I'll instead talk about the cast of these guys because they're both all over the place and very unexpected. Of course, you'd have your usual voices like Tom Kenny, and as always, an actor who'd play in previous Happy Madison films, this time being Peter Dante as the star of the mascots, the Foot Locker Ref. But then you got actors for Apollo Creed, Slinky Dog from Toy Story 3, and Zach and freaking Cody? The song ends with Davy finally reading the card his parents gave him right before their deaths, and their picture sings to him. Their voices are provided by singers Richard Page and the lead singer of Heart, Ann Wilson, best known for Ooh, Barracuda! Anyways, calling this song a fever dream would be a massive understatement, and honestly, for how much crazy that goes on in these 2 minutes, it will be hard to forget. And finally, we have the last song of the film, Bum Biddy. The song where Davey busts into the banquet hall to call out everyone in the place for their treatment towards Whitey. Again, this is technically the second best song, being a decent enough song with a solid opening, with Davey spouting the mistreatments without breaks while in between the riffs of a great sounding guitar. However, it does slow down and kind of loses the luster that the opening started us off with. That, and it starts to get repetitive when people start speaking about how they treat Whitey, each segment taking a huge chunk, and we're only given 3 people who confessed, including Davey. Then, of course, guess who comes in to shove himself into the moment again? It's the Rob Schneider Asian stereotype, who yells at the townspeople for what they did, despite throwing an insult at him earlier in the movie, but whatever.
What the hell was that? Did anybody else hear a parakeet?
Then Jennifer and Benjamin join in on the calling out, with Benjamin going all out on his singing, which was actually kind of funny, although I'm very sure it was unintentional. Then out of nowhere, one of the cops chasing Davey comes in with this dance, and once again, if, like I mentioned before, Rob's stereotype shoehorns himself in to dance with the guy. The song finally caps off with everyone in the hall dancing the same dance while singing the same song the cop and the restaurant owner were singing. It's a bizarre piece of music for sure, and surely didn't need to be as long as it was, but being the longest overall, it's, I guess, fun-ish. Overall, the songs, while having 2 that are kind of solid, there's a side of me that personally doesn't like the soundtrack as a whole, and I wouldn't be surprised if I don't check out a majority of these songs long after finishing this video. So what's to be said after everything I've talked about today? In terms of movies, any winter holiday should be out of Sandler's hands, as only his songs on stage are where he shines in that department. It seems Halloween is the only holiday he could get right, or at least with audiences. Even then, that's debatable. But of course, this film was awful, and certainly one of Adam Sandler's worst movies. In fairness, I haven't seen movies like Little Nicky or especially Jack and Jill, so there's a good chance I will hate those a lot more than this. I will say that I didn't hate it as much as I did back in high school, but honestly, I can also say that I still don't like it for many reasons. From the terrible jokes, lazy writing, desperation with product placements, awful characters, mostly forgettable songs, and some voice acting that can be annoying or even racist, I do not see the appeal that some have for this movie. Good for you if you enjoy it, but I'd probably need one of those scorpion bowls after this is all over. And no, as somebody who doesn't drink alcohol, I'm sure I'm speedrunning my funeral if I ever attempt to drink the whole thing. Oh well, I love you, Sandler. Thank goodness your studio finally made a good animated film with Leo, and I'm hoping this studio does more animated films, because if this is what they're capable of, I hope we can see more good animated content from Happy Madison. Thanks for watching the video. I'll see you guys in the next video. 3 out of 10. Okay, bye.